Good morning. Good morning. This is the Checkin In podcast. Biniam Astrus here on the 9th of August, 2021. Glad to have you joining in again this morning. Happy Monday to all of you. I'm not sure if it's a challenging way to start your week, but hope this podcast finds you presently well. Today's question we are answering is, why did you marry your spouse? It's going to be a fun one today. A bit more storytelling than reflections. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you a bit about me and my story and where I'm finding myself presently today. The Binge Check-In podcast exists for three reasons. One, to grow in self-awareness of ourselves. That's something I want to grow in, is to know myself better, how I work, how I tick, what makes me me. Secondly, to learn to be kind to myself. To learn to be kind to myself because for many years I wasn't kind to myself and what I thought about myself. And thirdly, to maximize my happiness. Not to the exclusion, I can say, of other emotions, but to get to happiness by processing and working my way through other emotions as well too. So these are some of the things that are really important for me in my own life, and I want to share these practices and disciplines with you so you could probably benefit by listening into my reflections, by sharing in the conversation as well, sharing your experiences. I would love to hear them as we go along. But those are the three reasons why the Binge Checkin In podcast exists. And I'm so glad you're listening this morning. Hello to all my friends on the YouTube live stream, on the TikTok live stream, and on the Instagram live stream. I appreciate you guys spending some time with me this morning. Again, the question we are answering this morning is, why did you marry your spouse? If you'd like to know more about me and what I do and what I'm about, my website is biniamasters.com. I'll talk a bit more about that towards the end of this podcast. Let's jump right into today's question. Why did you marry your spouse? This one here is a fun one because there are some evolutions. Hello, everyone coming in. A few evolutions in my own story. Why I married my spouse is more of a past tense question because my spouse and I aren't together relationally anymore, but we still do life together intentionally. And so I'd love to share that story with you. But many of you, my listeners, are probably in a season of life where you don't have a spouse. Many of you I know are quite young and are not even married. Some of you may not even have a partner or be in a relationship. And so this question may not be as pertinent as when I'm answering it. But thank you for being part of this podcast and listening in. I hope some of my reflections will help you in your considerations for your turn when you're there. Some of you may very well be in a relationship, and I would love to hear about why you chose your significant other. You don't necessarily have to be married to answer this question. I'm even happy to change it to saying, why did you choose your partner? What were the distinctive traits that you recognized in your partner that you're like, I like this and I want to be a part of this? I would love to hear what that looks like for you. If you don't have a relationship, I would love to hear what are some important things when you think about relationships. What do you look for? What do you value? What do you hope to see? And that would be pretty great to hear and reflect on, even as I'm sharing some of mine. I think this is an area that is worthwhile thinking about because it gives us a way of deciphering what we want to walk into a relationship wanting to experience, and how we also want to contribute in the context of that. We want to be people that are worthwhile being around, but we also want to have worthwhile people around us. In the absence of worthwhile people around us, if we bring influences that are devastating, it'll affect our life in a really tangible way, not for the better either. But let me share with you my story of why I chose to marry my spouse. My story is Let me see if I can put it simply. In my story, I met my spouse when I was 28 years old. I was 28 years old when I met my spouse. I was married when I was 30 years old. My spouse was my very first ever relationship. You heard that correctly. I never had a girlfriend until I was 28 years old. Now, it wasn't because I lacked any desire in having a relationship. I desperately wanted to have a relationship. I was very desirous of being in a relationship. There were so many girls along the way that I had significant crushes on. But for the longest time, I did not have a relationship because I lacked the confidence to be able to express my interest in these girls that I wanted to be in a relationship with. I lacked the courage to be able to go and ask them out on a date, to get to know them better in a relational context. And so for a long time, I didn't have any relationships. What that did for me was it increased the level of fantasizing or kind of thinking muchly of these individuals that I didn't have access to. I would think and build them up in my mind to this huge person of like, this is, if I would say to myself, if I could only be in a relationship with so and so, then my life would be complete. And that's how much of a priority they became in my thinking space. I spent countless and countless of hours daydreaming about what could be on the dates we can go on and the ways we grow deeper in a relationship and so many elements like this that yeah, there was a lot of investment of energy and emotions and time. Oh man. So I definitely had countless of crushes along the way. But when I first actually got to the point of gaining the confidence to express an interest in a girl, I was at 28 years old. So that's almost like 3 decades of my life trying to fumble my way through this. I'm not sure if you can relate to me, but that was a challenge. That was a challenge for me to put myself out there and say, this is me, and I would like to express myself this way in wanting to get to know you in this context. I do much better with it now, mind you. I've grown significantly, but it was a very long time before I was able to learn how to do this. So, why did I choose to marry my spouse? I'm even going to go back a little bit further than this question and say, why did I choose to be with my spouse in the first place? And why did I want to spend time with all those previous crushes as well? There was something in these individuals, these previous crushes that I saw that I said, I want to be around this person more because of the way they can make me feel. A huge part of it was driven by the fact that they were just beautiful people, beautiful aesthetic people. They were like gorgeous girls. I was like, I want to be with them because I'm attracted to pretty things and pretty people and pretty girls. And so that was how that expressed itself there. But with reference to my spouse, before we got married, what drew me to her in the first place was her quietness. She was like a really quiet individual. I wasn't. In my sphere, in my community, I was very extrovert. I was a community gatherer. I was the one that went around and made sure everyone had a place to feel a part of the group. I helped people feel comfortable. And so, thank you, Lucas. I appreciate your love, brother. um, I felt my role was connecting people, and so here is this new girl that came into this group, and so she was really quiet. She was a really good friend of one of my other acquaintances in that group, who was very loud. She's a real extrovert, like a full of life personality, and so for some reason, I saw my ex with this really loud personality, and I presumed that she too would be as loud as her. I presumed that she too would be as extrovertish. And When she wasn't, as I watched her over the next few times that we were getting together in our group context, the more I watched her, the more I saw that she and this other friend that I had were not the same. The one was really full of life and loud and laughed lots and didn't have any problem interacting with people. My ex, she was really quiet and she came alongside and she was kind of in the background scenes. And that for me created a lot of curiosity. I was like, who is this person that is so quiet? And yet she's with this other person who's like really, wah. And so I wanted to find out more. I wanted to understand more. And so I said, I need to get to know this person better. And so um, I remember when I first asked her out for a walk through the park in my small city that I lived in. I asked her out and said, would you like to go for a walk? And she said, yeah. So I said, delightful. And so we went for a walk and it was exciting. I knew what my intentions were. I knew how interested I was. And as I was on that walk, it was her quietness, especially not meekness, but like, sorry about that. My one phone is falling down on me here. Ah, I apologize for that, you guys. I'm trying to set it up in such a way that it doesn't fall down. Okay, here we go. It's set up. So as we were walking along, the more I got to know her, the more I was reflecting on this person. There's more here that I want to get to know. There's more here that is beckoning my curiosity to understand who this person is. And she is really intriguing to me because she's so unlike me and she's so quiet, and I have to do a lot of work to get to know her. And so I asked her for a few more dates. At this point in time in my life, I was in a season where I wanted to proceed in relationships in a specific way. By this time in my 20s, I had done a lot of reading on relationships and I put together an idea or a reference or a framework for how I wanted to do relationships. One of the things I did not want to do in relationships, excuse me, was I didn't want to be ambiguous about my intentions. I wanted to be very intentional. And so I wanted to be intentional in the sense that I was going to communicate what my desires were at the outset. I didn't want my the person I was interested in to be guessing and saying, "Is this person interested or are they not interested?" They're just kind of like keeping me hanging. I didn't want to play anything into that. So, uh, given that that was the case, now you might think this is really crazy, so just bear with me. I've shifted in some of my perspectives since then, but here's what I did. I think it was around the fifth or the sixth date that I said to her, listen, I'm interested in dating you because I can see a life or a future for us together in the future. I think you're a person I'd love to consider getting married to at some point. So I want you to know my intentions and my interests this way so you can figure out on your end if you're on the same way. I totally agree with you, Jay Shippers. Communication is really key. Absolutely. And most of us guys suck at it. We suck at it. Stereotypically, it seems that girls are better at communication than guys, but I wanted to change that. And so I told her, I'm thinking I want, like, I like you enough and I would like to get to know if marriage could be in our future. And so I want us to get to know each other in an intentional way, in such a way whereby we can figure out, is this a really good dynamic for us? If I express this to you now at the outset of the relationship, then you can figure out if you want to stick around for this or not. If you don't think that this is the future for us, then I'd rather know now before my heart gets involved, and then we can sort of, draw the line where we need to. So that's what I proceeded to do by the fifth or the sixth date, if you can imagine that. For those of you who are coming in, the question I'm answering is, why did I marry my spouse? And in my case, it's my ex because we're not together anymore, but I still, as you'll hear in my story, value and esteem her highly. And so that's what we're answering here. So as I was expressing my intentions to her at the very early stage in a relationship, I said it in such flowery language that I think, thank you, Mohammed. I appreciate that this is helping you out. As I was communicating to her my intentions, I did it in such flowery language because I was just, I can complicate things at the best of times just with the use of words, and people are like, "What are you trying to say?" That's what she was in essence saying. Is she was saying, "Could you say that in different words?" And I said, "I like you. I'd like to get married to you one day. I think I'd like you to figure out if this is something you see as well for our future. Because if you don't, then we probably should stop dating." And so she said, "Can I have some time to think about this?" And in my perception, I think it was like a couple of months at least before she got back to me. But that was the beginning of how our relationship started. And for me, I decided to marry her for a variety of reasons. One, she was such an intriguing person. Like she was really quiet, and I had to work really hard to get to know her. And she was so different from my personality, so different. I was like a very in front of people person. I was leading things. I was a leader in my community. I was very much engaging with people. She was very much in behind the scenes kind of a person, but she was beautiful. She is beautiful. She was gracious. She is quite kind. So many things that I really appreciated about her that made me say hell yes. And as we continued to date, eventually we got to the place where we said, yeah, let's go ahead and get engaged and get married. And so why I decided to marry her was because um, she was just a really fantastic person. And to this day, I continue to reflect on how amazing of a person she is. She's one of those people that you necessarily wouldn't hear about because she's not in front of people kind of a person. She's very much an in behind the scenes kind of a person. But even in the midst of the few years that we were married, she was an amazing supporter, an amazing encourager. We had our rough spells. We had our rough spells as I tried to figure out how to communicate well. As we tried to make a life together, there were some challenges that came up along the way that we had to grow through. So I'm not saying that she is innocent and a saint. No, she also had her challenges just like I did. But by and far, I would say she had so many good things that I came to appreciate. She was the mother of my three children. She sacrificed her education so she could, look after the kids at home. She gave me really good feedback in a really tactful and gracious ways. I so appreciate her kindness that way. And so, um, a few episodes back, I was answering a question, and the question was, "What do I love most about my spouse and my kids?" And as I answered that, I said, "She's not really my spouse anymore because we're separated, but I still answer the question because she's, to me, one of those really influential people that I've grown to appreciate, be thankful for, adore, and I'm so thankful that we still have a really good friendship." Now, in the midst of, for those of you that don't know my story, the reason that we're not together is because I made some really unfortunate decisions along the way, and I didn't communicate honestly, and I cheated on her. And so that's primarily why we're not in a like still married right now. But even in the aftermath, if I can just tell you guys how much grace she has shown me, how much kindness she's shown me, how much she has been willing to make things work between the two of us, even though I brought so much hurt into her life. That's why I'm a big fan of hers. I'm a big fan of my ex. I want you to hear that. I want you to hear me honoring my ex when I say she is really fantastic. And I'm so, so appreciative of her in my life. I'm so locked into making sure that she is well cared for as we go forward in the future. The very fact that we co-parent as well as we do is nothing because of well, actually, there's some things I contribute to that for sure. But by and in a large part, I would say it's because of her extension of graciousness. She's just one of the most gracious people I've ever met, and so I'm super thankful for that. I Harvey says, "You cheating? I can't see it." I know, Harvey. It's one of those things where I acknowledge that I give a really good first impression. But in giving a good first impression, I also have a story. I have a history that I'm learning from, and I have a trajectory in life where I want to aim for now. And a huge part of that for me is learning because of my mistakes along the way, learning how to appropriate and shift in such a way whereby going forward now, I don't want to make these mistakes anymore. But that's part of my past. Part of my past is lacking integrity. in that element, in communicating forthrightly about my desires, my expectations, my hopes, like these things that are really integral that make a relationship work really well. I lacked in that ability. And so that's one of the reasons I am as open about sharing my story, because in it, I remind myself freshly of my humanity and trying to work to be a better version of myself. Muhammad is asking, why did I cheat on her? Muhammad, I cheated on her. That's a good question. It's a fair question. Let me see if I can answer it this way. I cheated on her because I'm not saying this is legitimate, but I'm just telling you why. Because I didn't have the confidence to be able to express what I really wanted to experience in a relationship. That coupled also with the fact that when I got married, I was still a virgin. So I was a virgin at 30 years old, which means I didn't have any sexual partners in my entire teen years. Just because in the faith community, in the religious community that I was in, that was really, really discouraged. And um, they valued celibacy. They valued being a virgin by the time I got married. And so I didn't have the tools to communicate my needs to my wife because I didn't have access internally to be able to say, here's how I really feel or think or behave. Here's how I really want to see the world. I felt instead that I was constrained to saying something that I'd been taught all my life that I didn't quite resonate with. And I felt that I was kind of living a context that didn't reflect what I really felt. It was what my faith community had dictated, but I just never saw the consistency. And so as a result, I started cheating on my wife because I wanted to experience what it was like, what I thought I was missing out on. And I just didn't have the confidence to be honest about it and say, hey, I'd like to check out what it's like to explore sexually. And I've never done that before I got married. And so I really felt that I'd missed that season of my life of exploring my sexuality and relationships before I got married. And so it was a really cowardly move on my part, Mohammed, to try and experience those things that had devastating effects of hurting other people. And so at the very heart of it, I'd say it's just because I lacked the integrity to communicate forthrightly and honestly with my wife about what I was really trying to go through. But in the midst of all the ways that I hurt her, why did I marry her, or why do I still continue to think highly of her? It's just because she continues to consistently display those traits of graciousness, of commitment, of patience. Like there's so many good things that she continues to bring into our partnership as we co-parent together. That makes me a big fan of life with her and continuing onwards too, to make sure that she and the kids are well looked after that way. I've definitely learned from that experience where I made those really awful and devastatingly harmful decisions or choices that I made to hurt her. Going forward now, I would say for me, and I want to share this going forward part now for especially those of you who are not in a relationship yet, or maybe you're in a relationship. And Mohammed, I would consider myself as straight, and I appreciate the question because I know a lot of people they pick up vibes that I might be gay, and I'm not. I'm not gay. I'm straight. But going forward, one of the things I value as a non-negotiable for me personally is honesty. I never want to hurt someone the way I hurt my wife. I never want to break another girl's heart like that again. And so the best thing that I am implementing going forward is how can I speak honestly, truthfully to um, I want to speak honestly to whoever I'm considering. And for me, whenever I express interest in a girl, I want to give her as much heads up about what I feel that she should know about me before she says, yes, I'm going to give you my heart. So usually I'll go on a date with a girl. And if that date goes really well, then I'll tell her if she's inclined for a second date. On the second date, I'd like you to know my whole story, and I'll tell her all the the ugly truth about my past and how I made the decisions that I did that I'm not proud of, and how I've learned from those decisions going forward now. And I do this just so that there's no more surprises for those I'm wanting to connect with as I go forward. And so for me, that means I'm going to tell everything so that I give them everything that they need to know that I feel is necessary so they can say, I don't know if I want to go forward and connect with you emotionally. I don't know if I want to give you my heart because I don't think this is a context I'm comfortable with. I want to have that answer at the beginning instead of months in when they've vested their emotions into the relationship and they're hoping to see something else. So that's something that I inscribe now when I am proceeding in my relational contexts. Whew, that was quite a bit to share with you about my story, isn't it? It got pretty heavy there, and I appreciate the questions because this is life. This is life. I don't want to rewrite my past and make it all pretty. I actually want to tell the truth. Honesty is super important for me now going forward. And that's one of the things I want to present to you, my listeners, my followers, when you're following my story, when you're um, considering my influence that I'm presenting to you. Is this someone that I want to come alongside and rub shoulders with? And I totally honor those who say, no, thank you. I don't want to be part of what you're doing. I want to honor that because that's your choice. And I want to give you full agency and full freedom to be able to express that and part company if that's what needs being. Because I'd rather that than you buy into a version of me that isn't true. And for those of you that come along, I'm really appreciative of you being willing to acknowledge that part of my life and even learn from it from yourselves. Um, Zaki and Muhammad are wondering if I've ever been with a guy. I've never been with a guy. I've considered, but I've said nope. I have no interest in guys. I'm very straight, and so that's where I'm coming from personally. But I don't take offense when people mistake me for being gay. I'm very intentional about the way I present myself, and I choose this way of presenting myself because I find value in it. I find value in making the choices that I make in the way I communicate. I appreciate being really communicative. I appreciate being really forthright. I appreciate honesty. I appreciate giving a person their agency. Like there's so many things I've learned along the way, and so I am very confident in who I am and how I present myself. I don't take offense when people misinterpret me. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify and to affirm. But this is how I see my world now, and here's how I'm going forward. And this is why I value what I do value. You're so right, says Tronic. Honesty and openness is the foundation of any relationship, and there's a small window. Woodies, I'm doing awesome. How are ya? Zeki, I appreciate that. Thank you. I thought you cheated on your ex-wife with a guy because that's what I heard. I see, Mohammed. There's a lot of people who want to rip me apart, who want to, I guess, take away from the point of where I want to focus on, which is kindness in this world. And so they'll do as many tactics as they can to get me to respond out of like, "Urgh," but I don't take the bait. I don't take the bait because honestly, I've dealt with my own stuff. I've done I've made amends where I need to, and I'm trying to be on a different path. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to explain that. You're a great person on the earth, and we love you so much. I am from Eritrea. Woodies, I so appreciate you, sister. Thank you for the love you're sharing. I'm not sure whether I'm gay or not. What do I do, Binyam? Says Zaki. I will do that, Moody's. Thank you. Zaki, I would say if you're not sure, I would be open to talking to those that you know who are on both sides and considering what that might look like. Sometimes it's experience in our life that confirms which our tastes and preferences are, and there's nothing wrong with exploring what that looks like. And so that's what I would say. My dear friends, the time is coming to an end for our podcast. I am so thrilled that we have had this time for me to share my story with you guys and some of my perspectives. I hope it's been valuable. There's a few reasons, like I said at the beginning, why I do this podcast. Three key reasons, and that is to grow in self awareness, Um, I've been in this world now for 4 decades. 4 decades. And in that 4 decades, I've been growing more and more aware of myself. And I've been intentional about doing so, especially at this point in time right now, because it enables me to know what my values are, what my non negotiables are, where my boundaries lie. And it enables me to know how to communicate where I draw those lines. So I like being able to get more self aware. And I want to encourage you guys to do the same for yourself. What does that look like? I'd love to help you. Secondly, I want to learn to be kind to myself. There's a lot of people who are um, really mean in this world, and I experience some of that even on my platforms here. But I've gotten to a point where I'm able to overlook that. Why? Because I've learned how to love myself first. I've learned how to be kind to myself. I'd love to be able to encourage you in that same endeavor. Thirdly, I also want to maximize my happiness. I want to experience more happiness. But to get to the happy parts, we have to be willing to be able to experience the rough emotions and things that are very scary. And that's a gutsy thing to do for so many of us, to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I need to process some stuff. But in the clearing up of all that stuff and the processing of those emotions that we want to avoid, that is where you're able to clear up some space to experience some happy things along the way. I'd love to help in that process. Friends, I'm building a community on my website, biniamasters.com. This is going to be huge. I'm not sure who of you are going to be the first to join this membership that I have going on my website, biniamasters.com. But go there, check out my membership tier. I'd hate for you to find out later on I should have gotten in when I could have, because this was for my good. That's why I am doing what I'm doing here. I'm sharing what I'm sharing because I want to be able to share my experience with you guys. I want to share my experience in such a way whereby you're growing in awareness of yourself in a really encouraging way. You're also growing to be kind to yourself. And what does that look like for you? And you're growing in your experience of happiness. That's why I'm here. So join me as I pursue these aims, and let's build a community that is really impacting, that changes the world. That's what I'm aiming for. Thank you so much for joining today's podcast. I will see you soon, tomorrow morning again. Thanks for joining in. Bye for now.